Good morning, excuse you. Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, November 3rd. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. We are live with Mark Porter and Bill Kurelic. Their model-worthy faces you can see in the squares there on the screen for those of you who are here live. If you're not on here live, you can always get the podcast that will go up about 30 minutes after the show. We don't add anything in there. It's just a reproduction of what we do here, but this is a semi-award-winning podcast. We are happy to have the guys here today to talk recruiting once again. Bill, it was a good week. We started out with a Halloween commitment from Kayden McDonald. Anytime Ohio State can go into the South, Georgia in particular, and pull out a big guy for the middle of the defensive line, I'm excited. Please tell the people what they're getting and a little bit about his recruitment. It was a little bit hairy down the stretch.
Yeah, Kayden McDonald had long had Ohio State as a top choice. He's a guy that is kind of what the doctor ordered, so to speak. And you're looking down the road a little bit, Michigan, for instance, they want to run the ball. That's their MO. So you've got to be able to stop the run. And Kayden McDonald is one of those guys that you can plug into the middle of the line and stop the run. But he's a lot more than that. He is disruptive. If you watch his junior season highlight video, you'll be wowed. I mean, he had a tremendous junior season, and he's only gotten better. He's in the backfield, double-digit sack guy. He is really a good player. And of course, the comment comes up, why didn't Georgia pursue him? They offered him, but didn't really make him of the highest priority. And it's not, it's simply they're looking for a little bit different guy this year. They're looking for a bigger body type guy in the middle, the 6'4", 6'5" defensive tackle. That's not Kayden McDonald. So they're just looking for a little bit different type of guy, but Kayden McDonald is really good. He ended up picking Ohio State over Michigan. Those were his final two choices. Everybody was talking about Oklahoma, and they were in there, and Clemson was a possibility, but his final two were Ohio State, Michigan. Anytime you get a recruiting win over Michigan, Buckeye fans are happy.
Yeah, I mean, he's from Suwanee, Georgia. It's big-time high school football, and he is uber productive. If you look at his numbers for a defensive tackle or defensive lineman, he's super tackles for loss, sacks, tackles. A lot of guys that not Ohio State, but a lot of guys at this level that are recruited are kind of a projection of what a big guy could be when they get more effective. But this guy is productive, man. He's a playmaker. And if you see this, when it comes, I'm not saying this is going to happen for him, but when it comes to guys like Mike Hall, what separates the interior guys is the ones who can get the pass rush. It's one thing to be drawing two blockers and being the plugger in the middle of the line, a la Big Hank, who's now in my Cowboys. But if you can do that and get to the quarterback, that's when you start talking about a big-time draft pick, and Kayden McDonald at least is on the way to that. Bill, do you believe he is plug and play? We just got that question from Kerry Brown.
Well, that's really tough to do as an offensive or a defensive lineman, yep, at a place like Ohio State. So I don't necessarily think – I mean, as good as Michael Hall's been this year, he was not that way last year.
Exactly.
Tyleik Williams wasn't an immediate impact guy, so on. So that's really tough to do. I think that Kaden will be a guy that's going to get meaningful reps. I'm talking meaningful reps, not just into the game type thing, by sometime in his second season at Ohio State. Could he get on the field possibly his first year? Yeah. But again, that's really tough to do at a place like Ohio State to be an impact guy. JT Tuimoloau was pretty darn good as a freshman, but he's not what he is now. I mean, right. He's tremendous now.
Yeah, no doubt. I honestly think this is a little bit of an aside, but when it comes to defensive linemen, I honestly think we got spoiled by the Bosas because those guys weren't just great they were such technicians early on in their career that they were plug and play guys. And that's not a realistic expectation of any defensive lineman on the earth, really. Those two guys, in terms of their development, were at it like they were juniors when they were freshmen. I'll just put it that way. If you look at them technique-wise and stuff, and that's why they were so productive when they got to the league. I'm not sure I've seen any besides but even Chase Young coming from DeMatha, which is a great program. It took him at least 2 years to turn into what he was. The Bosas actually spoiled us, man. I'm serious. Their greatness and their readiness. I think, is that possible, Mark, that we were having greater expectations for others because those guys were so technically sound so early?
Yeah, as I'm listening to you guys talk, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. Where, I've always said this about Ohio State, whether it was Sonny Styles or guys coming in early, you shouldn't be able to come into a program like Ohio State and beat out grown-ass men that have been working out with Coach Mariotti for 3 years and just take their job. If you do that, then you've been the truly special recruit that all recruiting analysts covet, the plug and play guy. But at places like Ohio State, everyone that came before you was a plug and play type also. So it's like this, conflict. Everyone can't be plug and play every year. You can't just keep bringing in all these guys that you think are this special. So when you back up special with special beyond special, you guys are nailing it. It's going to take a year or two. They're great, and they're showing the traits, and he's got the explosiveness. He's got the power. Is he doing it against great competition? Is he doing it against grown men that are, fighting for their lives and their job? And now they're fighting for NIL money. And you're just going to walk in as an 18-year-old with no off-season program and shine in a big it's really a big ask, and it's no shame that they can't do it. And it's not like, well, he's not that great of a recruit, because you guys have pointed out, wow, Chase Young took a couple of years. Michael Hall took a couple. All these guys took a couple. And they're going to be first-round picks in the top of the food chain, tip of the spear type players. But, man, at that position with that type of size and strength on both sides of the ball on every team, you just don't come out of high school that ready-made. And that's not a knock. That's just, hey, what you have to do at this level. It's not like you're like a MAC program where, wow, this freshman can jump ahead of the whole group because we did nail a special one, that has traits that our other guys don't have. Everybody has these traits at Ohio State.
The difference in the Bosas, I'd say, is, so here's what we're looking for now. If your dad played defensive end and was a first-round draft pick, if your uncle played defensive end at Ohio State and was a first-round draft pick, if you then attend the best private school in Florida for football and your dad owns a gym, you can be plug and play. I don't see that happening again.
And you nailed it. There was so much prior development, and you nailed it with his technique, his hand fighting, his spin moves, his burst off the ball. A lot of kids I see like that, we call them tuned up. Like, he's maxed out. Like, you're not going to get anything else out of him. And it's almost a knock on players where somebody had a dad who owns a gym or whatever that story is, and it repeats. But a lot of times the kid's 5'11", 200, and he's tuned up. And, boy, what a player and what a statistical high school career, but there's nothing left on that bone. This happened in a player who had a special skill set, the length, the size, and then obviously NFL-type capabilities. But, yeah, he was tuned up, for lack of a better word, coming out of the gate.
And I think, we all expected Jack Sawyer to be the lost Bosa brother. I think what this just means is we just need to have some patience. There's a very good chance Jack will come on more towards the end of this year and be what he was next year. I just think sometimes we get spoiled here by guys who arrive with a little bit of a different background. And
out of Jack right now, as I'm doing some of the Irons guys, you're seeing a spark out of him. He had a pass rush this week where he spun around that defensive or that offensive tackle, and you could have swore it was a Bosa. So you're going to see a flash of it, and you're going to see a week or two where he's, regret, almost like Chase Harrison, or it's going to be a progress, or you're going to see it, and then hopefully by sophomore year, long lost brother, here it is. It's turned on, but it's just a big ask for young kids.
For sure. All right, Bill. Speaking of a big ask, everyone's expecting you to bring Damon Wilson to Ohio State. Will you be able to pull it off?
Well, Damon Wilson, let's go back. Last spring, I was talking to Damon, and the one school from even last spring, he told me flat out he was going to make an official visit to was not Florida or Georgia or Alabama. It was Ohio State. He said, I'm going to make an official visit to Ohio State. And that was last spring. And he kind of continued that in the summer. But he told me, I'm going to wait till I'm not going to do those official visits in the summer. And, he, for the most part, followed that. But I knew from the beginning, this kid is really serious about Ohio State. He did make that official visit for the Notre Dame game, and it went extremely well. I had somebody tell me that weekend, after that weekend, that was very involved that weekend with the weekend, that this is going to come down to Ohio State or Georgia, they said. They liked where Ohio State was at that point, but they knew Georgia was still out there, and it's going to come down to one of the two schools. Now, Alabama, they're involved too, but I still think that, as I felt and wrote and was told at the time, I still think it's Ohio State and Georgia. Now, he's going to, it looks like, visit Georgia this weekend for the Tennessee-Georgia game, along with everybody else in that part of the country and other parts of the country that is a great player. It seems they're going to be at that game. He hasn't said 100% for sure he'll make it there, but that's his plan. So, let's see, first of all, does he actually make it to that game? He probably will, but let's see if he makes it to that game. He makes it to that game. Does that mean that he's going to Georgia? My answer is, without a doubt, that doesn't mean he's going to end up at Georgia. And I will use Kayden McDonald as the case in point. Kayden McDonald made his official visit to Ohio State in September. I believe it was September 24th. I'm virtually certain, for the Wisconsin game. He then subsequently made an official visit to Oklahoma. Then his last visit right before his decision, his announcement, that was to Clemson. And lo and behold, those two schools didn't end up, Oklahoma and Clemson, in his final two. It was Ohio State and Michigan. So while I do think the first and last official visit, that can be important, or the first and last visit period can be important, it's not always an indicator of where the kid is going to end up. I still have Damon Wilson to Ohio State right now, and let's see what happens this weekend. Let's see if he makes it there. Let's see how that visit goes. Let's see what happens. But I continue to think it's Ohio State or Georgia. I continue to have Ohio State as a slight leader right now, and let's see what happens after this weekend. Keep in mind, Ohio State still has kind of a big game on the schedule there. Ohio State and Michigan. Maybe Damon Wilson's last visit is for that game. He hasn't said exactly when he's going to announce yet. So let's see what happens.
We have discussed the last visit theory on the podcast so many times over the years that I don't even know if I'm legally obligated to comment on it. So these guys, ask yourself this question, people. If someone offered you a free ticket this weekend to go see what's arguably the number one sporting event on the earth this weekend, you'd go. Obviously, I'm not a baseball fan. Before we go to break, Bill, when we talk Damon Wilson, we must talk about the other two triplets, Mateo Uiagalelei and Keon Keeley. This podcast would not actually go through the mixer without comments on them. Please update the people if there's an update.
I just checked with somebody on Mateo, not pretty recently, and same thing. He's probably going to go the distance, so to speak, and not decide until the end. Which way is he going to go? I think, we don't know that right now for sure. I don't think he knows it for sure. Ohio State, USC, Oregon, those are still the big three. If I absolutely had to pick right now, I would pick Ohio State as the winner. But again, we're going to have to wait and see. I honestly believe he hasn't made a decision yet, and those involved tell me that same thing. Keon, if I had to pick right now, I'd say Alabama probably has the edge, but I think Ohio State is right there with him too. I'm just going with what I have said for quite some time. I think Ohio State lands one of those three guys and possibly two. We'll see how it goes. And if they land one, or if they hit it out of the park and get two, what a defensive line class this would be. I mean, you're talking about Will Smith as an interior guy who is really good. He's a different guy than Kayden McDonald. So that's great. You got two different types of defensive tackles that are both great players. You've got Jason Moore, who could play and or tackle. Great player. That gives them some flexibility there. And then if you get one of the big three, or if you get two of them, that's a tremendous, diverse, talented group.
Yeah, I mean, if they could get even one to be the fourth of the group you just mentioned, don't sleep on Jason Moore, people. Jason Moore is Richard Seymour reincarnated, and I'm telling you, just wait. Guys who come from DeMatt that are from that pedigree, I know I always talk about this. His brother's the guy from Villanova who tore his Achilles in the Final Four last year. This is no joke, man. And the versatility. Very impressive, Bill, the way you described that, the kind of different pieces to fit in there. And we see our defensive line now with, the Michael Halls and the JTs of the world, and how they look different and bring different skill sets to the mix. It's pleasant gluttony. All right, we're going to take a quick break here and then come back so we can pay some podcast bills. And we are back. Mark that 17 minutes. Okay, gentlemen. This weekend, we are in Ohio. Playoff festivities kicked off last weekend. Definitely some fun stuff going on. Mark, you are working on your Buckeye in the Sky for this past weekend, which is going to be another award-winning effort. You saw some very tough, including one guy who made a point to run up to you and say hi. Why don't you set the scene for us?
Yeah, as Bill knows, you start covering these kids when they're so young. And a lot of times you're the first guy that actually pats them on the back and lets them know they're actually a prospect. And Jermaine Mathews, pick six, comes down the sidelines, and I think he recognized, runs right over the camera. They put on the turnover chain. And, it was a fun moment for him, fun moment for the fans when they get to see it. But that was like a cool thing for Bucknutters. You have an Ohio State guy making a play, and then he had a nice touchdown right before halftime. I love when these guys show up when we're there for a half. Bill and I have watched many corners who go into a game and they don't have a highlight for days because no one throws a ball at them. So when you get a pick six for a touchdown and some other big plays, it's a great night. He looks fantastic. He looks confident. He looks like he's having fun out there. The Winton Woods team had a little sputter. It started a little rough for them in the game. And then the next thing you know, you saw all the gear start to kick. Trey Cornish, the running back that was committed to Georgia Tech there, he was someone that, burst onto the scene this senior year. He's got a big statistical year. He picked up Michigan State, Kentucky, and others in the last week or so. So he's going to be a hot name coming here in the next month or so, what he's going to do in recruiting circles. Raphael Green, the big offensive lineman down there. They have a couple receivers. Obviously, the other corner headed to West Virginia. So Winton Woods is obviously a big-time program, headed probably maybe to the Final Four state championship this year. I got a chance to check out St. Xavier versus Fairfield. Ted Hammond at St. Xavier, the big guy on the field there, he is a monster. He's so much bigger than I remember him a year ago as a defensive lineman. I think he'll be someone we're talking about later on. I also went over to see Coleraine. They had a couple players we'll break down on film for you. They're picking up MAC offers, maybe getting into that Power 5 range. They may be blowing up some long athletes. And then we could talk about where we're going on the road this week. But Bill had Olentangy with Grover, the tight end, probably the best all-around tight end in Ohio, and Wiley at receiver. So there's a great film. And I'm not even mentioning a few of the sleepers and some of the other guys we're putting in there. But it was a big week last week. And, of course, next week it's going to be even bigger. I have some big films to break down.
It seems like most of the defensive backs Ohio State is in the mix with, their statistics are like what you mentioned. They got the island to themselves. Why do people keep trying Jermaine Mathews? He has like multiple pick six for touchdowns. Do something else.
And they rolled out right to him. I mean, it was like they rolled out. He was the only one in the flats. And, yeah, at some point, though, I don't know if quarterbacks realize who they're throwing to. I think they're just reading things and they think things are open, but you'd think the scouting report would be, yeah, don't do it.
Look the other way, dude. Go ahead, Bill.
Dan, that's a great lead-in for what I was going to say. Listen to this. This is kind of crazy. Jermaine Mathews, the season he's had, you know, he has played just a handful of plays all season on offense. I don't think he played much of even. I don't even know if he played offense before the last game this season. Yet he has 7 touchdowns this year. Yeah. It's crazy. He's got touchdowns, pick sixes. He's got them returning in the return game. 7 touchdowns without playing offense is a crazy stat, and that's where he's at.
You know, sometimes we sleep on Ohio guys because maybe the recruitment isn't as fierce and, you know, we kind of take them for granted. But this guy is a stud. I mean, Cincinnati, you know, we haven't always done the best job down there. Very nice to lock into this kid. And like I said, I don't understand why people keep throwing the ball to him. They should take the Springfield approach and let Pearson take the evening off. All right, there's some good questions up here. There was one really interesting one. I thought you guys would be. Oh, Bill, let's do this one. Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver out of Florida, canceled a trip to Michigan. He's been crystal balled to Ohio State ad nauseum. I think people are asking about his timeline because he's so obviously favoring Ohio State, even though he's a 2024. They think he might want to get it over with. Have you heard the same?
Well, he hasn't really. He originally did have a timeline. Early on, he told me that I wanted to decide by X time, and then he kind of kicked that back. He said, "Nope, not in a big hurry anymore." And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, he had an early timeline to make an announcement, make a decision, make an announcement, and then he decided, well, you know, I'm going to kick that back. I'm going to take official visits, is what he told me. I don't know that I think that's going to hold, you know, but the bottom line is he doesn't have an exact new timeline yet. He hasn't said, well, I'm going to announce by the beginning of my senior season, for instance, or I'm going to take official visits or whatever. He did say that he was wanted to take official visits, but, you know, we'll see what happens. I guess the short story is he hasn't reestablished an exact timeline. I still like where Ohio State's at. We're just going to have to wait and see what he decides as far as when.
We've had Andrew Ivins on here before. He's kind of the Florida guru for 24/7 Sports. He is all over the Smith recruitment. We would know if there'd been a change. And as of right now, I think people can be as confident as you can be about a kid coming to a college. All right, why don't we do this? You guys can let us know where you're headed this weekend, and you can weigh in on this question from Yakov22. In Ohio, do you think Canton is the best place for state championship games? Why don't you get us started, Mark?
There's a couple of reasons why I like it there. I don't know if there's something. I don't know if it's the best, but I don't know if there's something better. Those two stadiums, Massillon and Canton McKinley, are high school stadiums. Yeah, the Hall of Fame has revamped that place, and you know what? That's really cool to play there. I think what people worry about when it went down to Ohio State and some of the bigger stadiums is you get 3,000 or 4,000 or 8,000 people in there, and it feels like the place is empty. Yep. And you can't feel it. There's a hollow, kind of a quiet feel to it. I was down at the state championships from there at Ohio State, and that is cool for kids to play down there. I mean, it's certainly an experience from that level, but you lose a little bit of that. Being in Northeast Ohio, is it fair that everybody's got to travel up to Northeast Ohio? You know, some people are making 4 or 5 hour bus rides, where the Northeast Ohio, it's right in their backyard. Is that the fairest scenario? So that's why I say it might not be the best. I wish that was located in the middle of the state. But as far as Ohio goes, there's not too many places you could hold 7 games in 3 days and have the facilities to go back and forth and do it and handle the media, handle the traffic, handle the cars. So it really is a great place in Canton and Massillon to do it. There is history and tradition there, of course, you know, that kind of gives the kids the wow factor. I mean, is it Nippert Stadium for the Bearcats, or that even Kenton, Akron, they wanted to have it at those two stadiums where you could bounce back and forth. And yeah, there's nicer stadiums there and bigger, but for high school, I don't think you need bigger. I think the coolest games I've seen at state championships are when Massillon's packed. And you feel that, big time, and you can't get a ticket almost. That's more of a state championship feel than some of the other places. So I would think that has to be the best place, even though it's not centrally located.
Where are you headed this weekend, Mark?
Pickerington Central and Pickerington North play, and I want to go to that game. And I've debated it all week. I think I might send my wife to make sure we have some footage, because one of those teams isn't going to be there next week. And there's prospects that I need to see there, but Toledo Central Catholic's playing Avon Lake, and one of those teams isn't going to be there next week, and Perrysburg and another team are playing. So I'm probably going to have to go to Toledo to go see some teams up there that I'm, know are going to get knocked out of the playoffs. But that Pickerington game just is in the back of my head, just like a beacon. Like, there's 20 prospects on the field there. There's so many players. And last year when those two teams played, it's, like we're saying, a great high school atmosphere, standing room only. Good luck getting your sideline pass.
Yeah, a playoff game between two teams from the same neighborhood always lends itself to fans and you can't do anything better than that. Being on this, and this is one of the perks of our gig, being on the sidelines for a high school game that has 8,000 or 10,000 people there, man, it's almost worth being paid what I was my first few years in this job to do that. It was incredible. I always felt so special getting a chance to do that. It was incredible. William, your thoughts on Canton and where you're headed this week?
Well, I would pretty much echo everything Mark said. In fact, I think Mark hit on every point I would bring up about Canton and that game. The only thing I would add is, selfishly, I'd like it in Columbus because I live in Columbus. But other than that, I think Mark hit all the points of the good and the bad of that, so to speak. As far as where I'm going this week, I think I'm contractually obligated to go to Southwest Ohio because I haven't been there for at least a week. So I think that's a must. But yeah, I'm going back to Southwest Ohio. I think I've been to Southwest Ohio about 6 or 7 weekends out of the 11 so far. Going to see Winton Woods play Hamilton Ross. I'm going to see Jermaine Mathews. Going to see just some tremendous talent. We talked about Raphael, the big offensive lineman there, Raphael Green. Shamar Harris is another one, the wide receiver. Trey Cornice, they're loaded at Winton Woods. So anxious to see that game. And I was told too that our guy Jermaine Mathews is going to play some offense again this week. So we're going to see him at cornerback. We're going to see him playing some offense. We're going to see him playing on special teams, and maybe we'll see him selling concessions at halftime. Who knows? But looking forward to that game.
I was going to say, if this was a national broadcast, the way they're doing those like multiple platforms, you would have Jermaine Vision on ESPN2 with just a camera on him the whole time. And I think I would be tuned into the Jermaine cast over the main one. But we appreciate these guys stopping by. You cannot get two better guys on recruiting, but you knew that. Have a great weekend.